Och när blir det då? Ja, okej.
Ja,
Men det här kanske är lite precis som det
nej, det är kliniskt intresse.
det är som fan. Inte. Det är som man kan läsa det som vanligt.
Men du får köra markör som det står.
Ja, jag får se.
Du är evidens-level 4. Expert opinion.
Nej, det är det han skriver också. Han ska inte bringa det.
Nej. Speciellt inte inom områden där det inte finns.
Nej, precis. Därför är det som jag
Ja. Mitt område skiljer sig från de övriga.
Ja.
För där är det
mycket.
Ja, där är det gjort. Det är lätt. Ja, jag har lätt.
Hålla tiden antar jag så det är bra att köra. Ja, vet du. De strömmar ju. Ja, det är lugnt. Börja du. Jag har precis det är oerhört konstigt.
Okej.
Kuttat med en
Okay, hello everybody. I think we should try and stay to schedule, so it's time to start this session. And I would like to welcome everyone to this seminar that is hosted by the Swedish Orthopedic Trauma Society. My name is Kenneth Jonsson, and I'm from the Orthopedic Trauma Department at Uppsala University's Hospital. And with me today I have three very experienced and important trauma surgeons from Sweden. And they just went down from the podium, but I'll tell you that it's Assistant Professor Anders Ekelund and Assistant Professor Jan Tidemark from Sankt Göran in Stockholm, and it's Mikael Sundfelt from Sahlgrenska University Hospital here in Gothenburg. And today's topic will be evidence-based orthopedic traumatology. And I have planned to push this button. And also I have planned the session for 90 minutes. And first I will give you a little bit of background on a worldwide movement called evidence-based medicine. And after that, Jan Tidemark will talk on cervical hip fractures, followed by Mikael Sundfelt, who will talk on tibial shaft fractures. And finally, Anders Ekelund will give his views of what kind of evidence we have for the treatment of proximal fractures of the humerus. And hopefully in the end, 30 minutes or so, we will have a little discussion and questions from the audience. I'm pretty sure that most of you have heard about evidence-based medicine before. Since I'm a person that likes to prepare, I actually looked in the book or the program today and found out that Mohit Bandari was supposed to talk to us 30 minutes ago. So I was little bit nervous that the number one guy in the world on orthopedic evidence-based medicine was talking just before this, but I'm not sure it's luckily or if it's a sad thing, but he didn't. Because he had problems getting here. So I think that I'll be the first one that give you the definition of evidence-based medicine today. So what is it? This is the most common definition of evidence-based medicine. It's the conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patients, which I think means that we should use the best available evidence in a smart way when we care for our patients. Another way that you can define evidence-based medicine is that evidence-based medicine is the integration of best research evidence with clinical expertise and patient values. So this means that we need to be experienced doctors, but we also need to know the literature, and we need to talk to our patients in order to give good health care to them. The question that comes to my mind when I look at this and many others is, aren't we doing this already? And if we're not doing this already, I think maybe we should start doing that, because to me it's kind of embarrassing to tell a patient that I have no experience in taking care of your injury, and somehow it's as embarrassing to think that you haven't looked in the literature and tried to find out what kind of support you have when you decide on how to treat the patient. Still, many doctors are skeptical about this idea of evidence-based medicine, and the first reason is just what I just said, that aren't we doing this already, and we don't need anyone tell us to go to the literature and try and do best for our patients. And it is true that one could argue that doctors have always tried to practice evidence-based medicine, but maybe not always with success. Many treatment strategies are introduced without good evidence still today, and we still have old traditions that are outdated and inefficient, but we stick to them. And if you ask around, maybe in this room, what is the method that you use when you have a clinical question that you want to answer? And you will probably get answers like this. Well, mainly I rely on my own clinical experience. I've done this before, I know it works, so I'll do it again. Or maybe you've read a review article that says that this is the way it should be done, or you ask an experienced colleague, how should I do this? And maybe you read in Campbell how you should do the surgery. Or, which is very common, is that you go abroad and you come back and have listened to a hot shot that says that this is the way to treat the patient. The problem with this approach, which is sometimes called eminence-based, is that the eminences maybe haven't read the literature, at least you don't know that. Another problem or criticisms against evidence-based medicine is that there are too few randomized controlled trials, and there will never be a randomized controlled trial that answers the question that I have. But the leaders of evidence-based medicine have always stressed that EBM is not restricted to randomized controlled trials. It involves tracking down the best external evidence. And this means that if there are no RCTs or meta-analysis, there is most likely some evidence at some other level that may be helpful. And it's also so that not all clinical questions can be answered with a randomized controlled trial. It may be unethical to do that trial, it may be too expensive to do that trial. And when we have a randomized controlled trial, we still sometimes have problem applying it to our own practice, since we are surgeons and we have personal techniques and we're not handling out pills that easily can be controlled and blinded for. The third common criticism or misconception, maybe, if you believe in EBM, is that EBM ignores clinical expertise and is cookbook medicine. But as the definition states, we need the clinical expertise to be able to interpret the evidence that we have. And even the best evidence may be inappropriate or inapplicable to an individual patient that we have. So external clinical evidence can only inform us but never replace our expertise. That's the thought. That said, evidence-based medicine, what it brings new to the table is to focus on evidence and the best evidence. And this implies somehow a hierarchy in the family of evidence. And several of schemes, like the one you see up here, have been drawn to try and rank different types of evidence. Why do we need these schemes? I think maybe most importantly because since the amount of scientific data is so enormous, it's an advantage to start looking at the studies that are most likely to give us the correct answer. And with a grading like this, maybe that could help us sift through all the data that's around. I think one should stress here that the level of evidence does not always mean the quality of the study. So a randomized controlled trial can be done in a bad way, and a case series or case report can be done very well. So these levels doesn't necessarily grade the scientist that did the study. The aim of the grading is to tell the reader what is the probability that the conclusion or recommendation that came out of the study will hold true in the long run, and what is the risk that the conclusion is due to bias. You will find different grading systems in different types of literature. This is a grade criteria for the level of evidence, which is an international group have developed, and it's used in evidence-based guidelines mainly, and in meta-analysis. It's, for example, used by SBU, which is the Swedish governmental institution that works with evidence-based medicine. And in the most recent report that I know of that has anything to do with orthopedics, they looked into evidence on antibiotic prophylaxis in orthopedic surgery. They found, for example, that there is evidence for using antibiotic prophylaxis in surgery for closed fractures, and they graded this high quality evidence. So by going back then, high quality evidence means further research is very unlikely to change our confidence in the estimate of the effect. So that's high quality. Next, they found that there is no evidence for extended antibiotic prophylaxis above 24 hours, and they graded this moderately quality evidence, which then means further research is likely to have an important impact on our confidence in the estimate and may even change that estimate. So maybe if we go ahead and do more studies, we'll end up finding out that either we'll gain more confidence that we shouldn't do more than 24-hour prophylaxis, but it might be that we actually find out that we should, based on this grading system. This is another grading system that's widely used, and it's a development of a system that was designed at the Center of Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford, and it's widely used in journals. JBJS uses it, and Clinical Orthopedics uses it. And I think I would highly recommend that everybody studies a table like this and learn it by heart, because nowadays it's very difficult to go to a conference like this without throwing around some levels. I mean, at the bar tonight, people will sit there saying this is level 6 or 7 evidence, meaning that this is the opinion of somebody who's not that smart, really. But if we look at level 1 evidence in therapeutic studies, it means a well-conducted randomized controlled trial. And level 4 evidence is evidence from case series, which is still the most common way that we report our results. So that's level 4 evidence. I think evidence-based medicine should be summarized like this, that it's evidence plus experience on the basis of patient values. And evidence-based medicine is not restricted to randomized trials. Hierarchy of evidence provides a guide towards sifting through data. Studies that limit bias to the greatest extent are higher level of evidence. And if we use evidence-based medicine, we might avoid headlines like this. And for those of you that don't read Swedish, this was published in a important morning newspaper in Sweden, where I think 3 or 4 experts, level 5 evidence, claims that 10,000 arthroscopies are done without any gain for the patient and only putting the patient at risk. They were luckily basing this opinion on a few randomized controlled trials, which are level 1 evidence. So with that, thank you. And I'd like to ask Jan Tidemark to come up and tell us a little bit about cervical hip fractures.